Please pray with me. Holy One, may there be more of you and less of me. More of you and less of me. More of you and less of me. Amen. Palm Sunday and I go way back. You know this by now. I was actually born on Palm Sunday, which seems oddly fitting for me now. But Palm Sunday is a day in which I have always participated, and I have such fond memories of it. Every year, the children's choir at my home congregation performed a processional, where we sang and danced with palms. It was the same song every year, "Do You See That Man?" which is quite the banger if you asked me. And I loved it. I mean, it was right up my alley. Singing, choreography, and a very forgiving and enthusiastic audience. It was everything I ever wanted, every performer's dream. My brother Brennan, on the other hand, really hated Palm Sunday and dreaded it every single year. He did everything he could to avoid the inevitable palm twirling and step touches. He faked sick, I think, every year, and eventually he just snapped. One year, while the rest of us were singing and twirling, Brennan stood there, teeth clenched, making seething eye contact with my mother as his fists wrapped tightly around his palm fronds, snapping them at the root. This was the last year that Brennan was in choir. I guess that Palm Sunday was only a joyous occasion for some. Just like this story is only joyous for some. Don't get me wrong, there's so much to say about this passage from Mark and about Palm Sunday in general, but I'm also painfully aware of the complexities of this day, which presents a unique challenge for all of us this morning. The story from Mark's Gospel is exactly what we have come to expect for Palm Sunday. Like the other Gospels, it lays out the nuts and bolts of the day. Jesus comes up to the town of Bethphage and commands 2 of his disciples to untie a donkey and her colt and bring them to him. He rides them into Jerusalem as people lay their cloaks out on the road, and they begin to shout in joyful praise of Jesus, saying, "Blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest heaven." It's pretty standard stuff, right? So, what then are we supposed to glean from this story year after year after year? I've heard it 30 times, and yet I'm not entirely sure what the takeaway is supposed to be. What's the nugget of wisdom that we're supposed to find and take with us into the events of Holy Week? I don't know, maybe we take with us the fact that the story of Palm Sunday is included in all 4 Gospels. Not even Christmas is in all 4 Gospels. So, that's got to mean something, right? Perhaps it's this story that holds the truth we know so well, that we're meant to carry in our hearts. Perhaps it's much more significant than we ever thought possible. Maybe we take with us the fact that people from all over were shouting Hosanna. That after seeing Jesus, traveling and preaching and teaching and healing, that they finally got it. They finally understood what Jesus' life and ministry meant. Jesus foretells his death several times in the Gospels. He tells his disciples over and over what will happen and why. He understands the trajectory of his life and of his ministry and is fully aware that he will die. But he doesn't run away from the path before him. He rides on into the city, lauded and honored by the crowds of people gathered, knowing what will transpire in the coming days, knowing that that same crowd will eventually shout, "Crucify." He knows. He knows what's coming. He was so attuned to God, to the pulse of love beating throughout God's creation, that he could see the larger picture at hand and was brave enough to fully step into it, even though it meant that he would go through something horrible. The courage and determination that Jesus had to trust in God, knowing the danger of the situation, is both tremendously compelling and entirely exasperating, especially to those who loved him most and believed in his way and truth and life. And so, as a means to honor him, they speak up and make a joyful noise unto God. They proclaim that Jesus' love and grace and compassion for all people is what moves us forward. And maybe that's what allows us to ride on into the future, through the ups and downs of our lives, the ups and downs of our faith. And perhaps Palm Sunday, this holy day, is meant to be our reminder to share that with everyone that we meet. It's an ancient story, one that we return to year after year, and yet every year it feels prophetically immediate, completely urgent. It is a compelling story of Jesus' love for all. It's a call to hold space for love even in times that feel uncertain. It's a call to move forward bravely with strength and conviction for the things that we believe in. To think about that bigger picture and take action in creating that image in real time with the whole of God's creation, our brothers and sisters who walk with us, the earth that we have the privilege of inhabiting, and all of God's creatures all around. This passage from Mark calls on us to reflect on the obstacles and barriers to the future that we want, the future that God has in store for us, if we can move past all of the crap we've distorted and misused for our own benefit. It calls on us to look truthfully at the road ahead, cracks, potholes, and all, and to move forward anyway. It calls on us to listen to one another, to keep going, grounded in our faith and in our beloved communities, fueled by the love that Jesus had for the people of God, up until his last days and even after them. It's his love that carries us into the future. His love, the cloak that softens our pathway and meets us on the road. And we're called to carry his love with us throughout the brutality of this week into his resurrection and beyond. We are in a unique time in history when this call is perhaps at its most important and most vital. Some might call it a time that's fearful and daunting. I know I do on my worst days. But it's an opportunity, a time for us to take the message of this story to heart and to live into it for real. There are so many important causes that can bring this story to the forefront of our lives, that can bring justice to the forefront of our lives. Causes that call on us to listen to the voices of others, to take into consideration what it might feel and look like to stand in their shoes, and to bring the light and love of Christ into the world so that we might see that bigger picture. The conflicts that rage on in Gaza and in Ukraine, the treatment of trans-identified people, the children and adults who continue to be killed at the hands of gun violence, ongoing crises in physical and mental health care, where those in desperate need are not able to access or to afford the services and treatments they need to survive, and so much more. But the undertaking of these causes to effect real change, the grassroots planning, the protests, the resulting changes to infrastructure, legislation, and socio-political systems, is massive. It's huge. It's scary and unknown, and there's potential for backlash and other dangers and harm that we can scarcely imagine. But moving through those unknowns, moving through the potential dangers and the backlash, is the only way to attain the future we so desperately seek, and to create the future that we want to see together. It's the only way. It's only through the process of death and new life that we transform our world. And that journey begins with love. Love for ourselves, love for one another, love for God and God's creation, and love for the journey that we are all taking simultaneously, united in the grace of Jesus' courage and compassion. So let us, with Christ as our example, and with this story in our hearts, minds, and spirits, ride on with fervor and inspiration, compassion and mercy. May it be so. Hosanna in the highest. Amen.